The debut album does its thing. A year later, you get ready for Vendetta. What was the game plan, and what adjustments did you make from the first album going into the second album?
Um, I think with Vendetta, the label, myself and my team, I think we all wanted to see how far we could push things. Um, and a lot more had came into play, in terms of how things had developed. And so it gave me an opportunity to work with Bad Boy and work with Puff. And we've been talking about doing that for a sec. It gave me an opportunity to work more with Rule and X and a whole. And they were blooming as artists, and they were becoming these bigger than life forces that were like out of this galaxy. So
Right.
it gave that an opportunity. It gave me to continue to create with a couple of the people that I had initially worked with on the natural, in the sense of like Pete Rock and Havoc. And it also gave me a chance to, I guess, try to broaden my appeal.
Hmm.
So all those things were in play, and it was funny because just like I took a year between singles, I kind of took my own sweet time with the second album.
Right.
So I remember the label like, you want to record now? And I was like, nah, not yet, not yet. But as that was occurring, rap itself was changing, and it was going from being, for lack of a better word, as uncut and as it got cleaner and it got bigger and it got more commercial. And it became this thing that was just eating every other genre of music. And so, music was changing. And I think going into Vendetta, I think I realized that the landscape was shifting. But I also knew that there were things that I could do that people maybe didn't expect from me.
Hmm.
Um, and so, like I said, like the natural probably didn't have room for a record with P. Diddy, with Puff, but
Right.
Vendetta allowed me that space, and it allowed for that to set a tone. So
Right.
that's pretty much how it was.
The album produced two singles.
Mhm.
Why only two singles, and what was the relationship like with TVT at this time?
At that time, I think there were signs that TVT was kind of having their own trouble, I guess, with figuring out what they were as a hip hop label. And I think they were going through a lot of growing pains in terms of figuring out personnel and direction and emphasis and all these different things, and I think sometimes things happened with myself, um, that they kind of weren't, for lack of a better way, prepared for, because the response was way bigger of a magnitude than they may even have thought. And so, watching that over the course of time, and I think the other part of it was, I had a very unique relationship with TVT. Like, it was almost like I worked there myself in a sense. But, in retrospect, I don't know that I would say having a relationship that close with your label, it has its pros and it has its cons. I mean, and, the good part is that you do always have an opportunity to kind of put your input into things, and they allow that open door for you to discuss everything. And but the con of that is that you're able to witness all the things, good and bad, play out in real time.
Hmm.
And so I think it came to a point where we started to I could kind of feel the beginning of the ground becoming a little thin between us, or underneath of us rather.
Hmm.
but I still would like kind of put the best effort forward, in turn, and just believe that that would alleviate itself at some point. And I was concentrating on doing an album, so some of the things we wanted to do were bigger than they were anticipating. It was a very expensive album at the end of the day, which is like never really good for an artist unless you're like in the position to know that that payoff was certified to be the return. And you can't have that certifiable return if you don't have your own house of cards in order. So TBT kind of was blunt, rather, was going through, they just couldn't figure out how to properly put both their feet on the ground. And that became the genesis of, things that led to us, going separate ways. And as that was occurring, I think a little bit of tension started to initially take place between myself and Gotti in a creative sense. And I also think that it was at a time where, his energy was translating into other things, such as Ja Rule and such as Jay-Z and such as DMX and such as Def Jam. And I think all of that, I kind of knew it was a matter of time before all of that kind of collided. But I think we all kind of did our best to try to avoid that collision. But
Right.
some things are just inevitable, so you can't really, get around them, And that's pretty much what that was at that time.